All right. So I want to go over quickly what I covered in class yesterday. I also want to cover a couple other things that came up, just this way, a little bit of clarification in what we covered from the very first project. And then I also want to show, since I'm recording this, there's like even more that you could do that's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to show what we did, so this way that you have all of that instructions, and then I'll go a little bit further and explain. All right, so to start, you have your document that looks something like this. Now remember, this example that I'm using is 4x4. You're using 5x5. The reason being, there were some constraints that I did with the previous class with this, with printing. So that's why we had to like kind of shrink it down for it to work. But with your class, we could get away with doing the 5x5. So that's why there is a little bit of a discrepancy when I'm, kind of showing you. All right, to start, you got to get each one of these to be in its own box. So what you're going to do is you're going to use a simple rectangle tool. On each one of these, you're just going to click, and then you're going to make it for 5x5. And then with your alignment, you can align, as long as you have this to align the artboard, I can hit center and center. Now, if I simply just create a mask by selecting all of this and hit Command 7, everything is fine, but there's no background, right? So because I'm using white and I was using the white from the paper itself, that white's not coming through. So you have two options here. One, you can send this to the back and change it to white, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to bring that in the front and then hit Command 7. And now when I drag it out, I now have that background. Another thing you can do, actually let me do, is let's say we don't have the background and I simply have that sitting in there, and I didn't add that into the back. I can then change the mask itself to be the color by selecting it. So I can click on the mask itself. You can see there's no fill, no stroke, and now I can add that background color to the actual mask. All right, going to get you the exact same spot, so it really just comes down to a preference that you prefer. All right, so I got this. Let's bring this back to here just so I have this all right there. And now this is going to sit to the right, and this is going to sit to the left, and this is going to sit on top. All right, so in here, I'm going to add my 4x4. And since I did the background, and then I hit Command 7, make sure I don't have anything else in there. Oops, I don't want that in there. And I can move this over. All right, this is the next one. And then Command 7. And I can bring it here, and now when I rotate this with the bounding box, you will see the bounding box stays perfectly horizontal. All right, that's important because we want to be able to kind of tweak the top down. Okay, all right, so now we need to figure out what the angle of the cube that we want to see. The easiest thing to do with that is use our share tool, which you can see it sits right in here, and then you just move it down. You have to hold shift, because if you don't hold shift, no matter, even if you're like going a little bit off, you can see how it gets a little tilted, right? By holding shift, you keep this perfectly vertical. All right, same if we were doing it this way, it would keep it perfectly horizontal. All right, so holding shift is important. So we end up doing, actually wait, I wanted to show you two ways of doing this. All right, so the first way, we go in and we simply figure out, all right, I want this to basically be about that angle there. Okay, now I'm going to make sure that this is aligned to the top, and then I want this to be aligned evenly here. When you click on an object, remember you have that little black dot next to the arrow. When I hover over an anchor point, it turns white. So I want to wait until I have the white anchor, and then I pull, and I'm holding shift because I want to make sure the top stays perfectly aligned to the top of this. But I want this to be aligned perfectly there. So you can see the black arrow turns white. That lets me know that this space right here, if I hit Command Y, is perfectly aligned all the way down. All right. Now with this, I can go to my share tool and then move this by clicking up in here. And then I can move this down to there. So now this angle here is exactly the same. Now I need to make sure that these here, the width, matches up to the edges here and here. So I select both of these. I go to the edge of the bounding box here and I stop pulling in. I have to hold Option because if I don't hold Option, it's only going to pull one side. When I hold Option, it keeps the center perfectly in the middle. I can also move my arrow all the way around this edge of the bounding box. I can wait and I go and you can see how it kind of clicks right into where that anchor point is. All right. I think it slipped for a moment. There we go. All right. So now this point matches up perfectly there. Okay. So what we do, we bring this down, we align it right there, and then we move this. Actually, why did that get off a little bit? And then we can adjust and move that where it needs to be. All right. That is terrible. So this here, I think the overall, I went way too long with the share tool, and like it's showing the top way too much. All right, so that was the first way that we looked at. Another way you can do this is to go the opposite. Say, all right, I want this, and I know I want the top to be about like this. All right, I now can move this right up into there, and then I can move this one right up into here. All right, so now instead of doing this part first, we're basically letting the top dictate what the shape is going to be. So now with these, I can do the same thing, bring it in until I hit the edges of this, and then I'm going to use my share tool. This time I'm keeping it on the top right, and then I move the top left into place. And then I can do the same with this. Click here, lock into the top left, and then move it there. All right. So then that's the other way here. Now, one of the things with this way, there are times that you want to kind of adjust this. So then you'd end up, in this case here, even though this was terrible, there are many times that you can make this adjustment and move this around. And then because this is independent, you can then change where that sits. All right. When it has this, you can then have to select both, kind of tweak it this way, and then you're all set. All right. So those are the two ways that you can then adjust and build out the cube depending on the angle that you want it to be. Just for reference, this one here is not great. This is a much stronger representation of what it is. So when you bring this item in, let me do this one again. I bring this in. When I make this share, don't go as extreme as I did here. All right. If you end up making a mistake and things are a little bit off, then you just redo it very quickly. I think you want to keep copies of this. So this way you can bring it back in, and then you're looking at this and I say, all right, you know what? That's not great. I'm going to put this in here, and then I'm going to shrink it down to where I want it to be. And now I can use that as a guide as to what I don't want. And then I can then move this back into place and then try and get a much better angle for this. All right. All right. Once you have this, you can even bring in some shadowing, right? So now I can click on my arrow. I can click inside this shape with the white. I can go into my color and add a little bit of darkness. And then the same with this one. If I'm saying that the light source is going to be coming this way, and this is going to be the darkest, then I'm going to come in and make sure that this is darker than the left. That also means I'm going to be clicking this in here and making this even darker, and figuring out where everything needs to be in terms of color. All right, and like so. All right, so you can add in, you do not have to at all, but you can add in a little bit of shadowing to kind of give it a little bit more of the illusion of that three-dimensional. All right, one other thing that happened yesterday, let's say I have this right here, and it's not filled. Instead, I'm going to have it as a stroke, and we do this. So now, when I bring this over, and if I shrink it down, I have this turned on. So we covered this in the very beginning of the semester. You have your options right here of strokes and effects. All right. So because this is turned on, you can see that this stroke right here is set to, where's my strokes? My stroke is at 3. Okay. When I shrink this down, it will drop the size of that stroke. All right, so you can see now it's 1.395. If that is turned off, so if I go in here and I turn this off, and then I shrink it down, it will keep and maintain that 3 point. So you can see the difference between this, right? Between this one and this one. So there are times that you want that turned on and you want it turned off. There are many times that as designers, we have to design our work that's going to be used by other people. So what I would recommend, anytime that you have anything in here and you see a stroke and you're like, you know what, I don't want anyone messing up my design, right? You make sure you never have strokes, because they may not have that setting set the proper way, okay? So when you click on this, if you see stroke, even if you have other things, like right now I have other elements selected, I can go to Object and go to Expand. There are times that you'll see Expand Appearance. You have to click that first, and then you can go into Expand. When you click this, it's going to give you the option of all of this, right? You definitely want to make sure the stroke is selected. We click OK, and now you can see when I go back to my stroke color, there is no more stroke. So now, when I shrink this down, it will automatically shrink down because it is not a stroke anymore. It's actually a filled object. All right, so that's one thing that you want to be careful of. All right, the last thing, I did cover it yesterday very quickly. What happens when you have something that is on two sides of the cube? So in this case, you can see I have this color going all the way across. I have this color going all the way across, and I have that separate from that. So that's fine. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in just like what I did before. Let me make this white. Not that it matters, but I want this to be in the middle. I need to make copies of this and this, because if I don't, it's going to be removed when I click this. So I hit Command 7. That's fine. Everything is good. But now I just took it away from this here. All right. So once you have this set up, you go into anything that you're going to have to copy over, just make a copy. So I'm going to click on this, this, and this, and I'm going to hit Command C to copy. All right, just leave it alone. Don't hit Command V or anything else, because you might get lost in the shuffle. Now I create my mask. I hit Command 7. I can move this over, and then now I have this here. I can then click and then hit Command B. Oops. To paste behind, and it brings it back. So now I create another 5x5, drop this right into place, and now I can hit Command 7, and now I have my two separate sides. If I hit Command Y, you can see that with that mask, I have both of them still there in the background. That's not a big problem, because once you have that mask, you can control what you have going on. All right. The other thing, what I would recommend to make this go much smoother for you, is you have all of your sides broken out, right? So right now I have this, and then I have this right here and here. This is also going to be on the sides, right? I got this going on. You want to figure out what this is going to be with this coming down like so. If I click on this, I can just double click and it will remember what my angle was. And that way I can get these done at the exact same time while doing this. So you don't have to do, one side, then the second side, finish that. Now you got to do the other side with the other side. All right, so you can just double click and it will remember what that was. The other thing you can do is if you're trying to match up this, is you line up where all of this goes. You can see, because I'm using the anchor point and making sure that anchor point sits there, I'm then going to go in. I'm going to shrink this down to be that high. I'm going to bring this in to be that width. And then I can go click on the top left, and then I'm going to bring this there. So that way now that side is done. And I can do the exact same thing here. I make sure that's locked into place. I click this. I make it a little smaller. And then I can move it in. All right. So even if you don't want to do both sides at the exact same time, there are ways you can go in and then make that adjustment later. And then just like before, we can click this. I can go into my color, darken it up a little bit, and then kind of show that shift in the three-dimensional. All right. The only other thing, there is another tool that you can use. I think this is enough. You don't need to do anything else other than, what I just showed. However, if you wanted to, so let's say I got this one right here. I come over here, and then I want to use this one as an example. All right, so right now, I still have rich text. So this is type, that is type, that's type, and this is type. All right, this and this, right, are type and type, but this is all graphics. There's a tool underneath here that you can see, the tool that we're using that's within the scale tool. Underneath here, if you click on this tool, you're going to have these options. All right. The freeform, honestly, is useless because you already have that with the bounding box, right? So you can click this and everything moves around. However, to the right of that is a perspective. When we click this, and then we go and click, you can see how it changes when you go over the edges. You can go and click, and you can see that it changes the perspective. However, it's leaving the type alone. All right. So if you click on this and hit Command-Shift-O, it will no longer be type, right? And then we can go to that same tool, click, and now you can see everything has perspective to it. All right. So if this is something you want to do, you just need to go in and make sure everything is outlined. Once you end up having this, so you figure out, where that's going to be, you figure out, all right, I want that kind of perspective. Actually, this one here is going to be better to do. So let's do this. I'm going to convert everything to an outline. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to adjust, and then I can go into my share. I'm going to keep that, and then I'm going to move everything down a little bit. And then when I pull this in, you can see I have a little bit of perspective to the actual cube. Subtle. You want to be very, very subtle on this because it gets really funky very fast. I think this is enough to get the idea across. If you want to add a little bit more to it, go for it. I think it's worth exploring and just seeing what happens to it. But with type, you're going to have to convert it all to outline. All right. So if you have any questions, any problems, or any issues. Oh, wait, there was one other thing that I think there was questions yesterday. Let me get rid of my masks. All right, and then this one. All right, so to create that other piece that sits to the left or the right of this, you want to create one solid outline of this entire shape. All right. So in here, start off just like you did before. You have your 5x5. Let that sit right here perfectly in the middle. And then we want to extend it all the way down. Okay. To do that, you want to use your transform tool. So we're going to go to Window. I have it open somewhere on my other screen. Where are you? Right here. All right. So I want to extend it from the top down. You will be creating 5 by 20. All right. You want to make sure that you have these dots. It's basically, you can see, the top left, middle, top right. So if you have it in the middle and then you change the height to 20, mine's going to be 16, it will use that middle and extend to the top and bottom. I have it sitting at the very top. So if I click the very top middle sitting in here, I can then change this and it will extend it all the way down. All right. Then you want to add in one sitting in here. And then you want that to be a little bit wider out. You just want to overlap slightly. And then I want this one to be in here. So this way I have 3 objects that cover the entire 6 sides. When I select all 3 of these rectangles, I can go into my Pathfinder, which is right here. And the top left, if you just hover over, you can see it says Unite. You click it, and now it's one solid object. Now I can select everything and then hit Command 7. And now I have my object sitting in here. I got to add a background to that. And then you could change, alter, and move it where you need it to be. Okay, so that is it. I hope this helps. Really, really great work on this final project, and I really enjoyed having all of you in class this semester. And yeah, if there's any issues or any other problems or questions you may have, please reach out. All right, good luck. Have a great day.